So the center of the storm just pushing closer to Naples and over inland, currently around wind speeds of 185 kilometers per hour. So that's sustained with gusts upwards of 200 kilometers per hour, pushing a lot of that water onshore. That's why we've been seeing a lot of that inundation. Now, our very own Mark Robinson and Chris St. Clair are on the scene in Sarasota, Florida, and they're talking about where they're hunkering down. It's in a parking garage, and they'll show you exactly where. Thanks for that update, Mark. We will be checking back in with him later on. Now, I wanted to show you this. Even though the eye wall is located around the west coast of Florida, we do have not as much storm surge, and the reason why this is currently, as we see a change in wind direction, we will see wave heights in excess of 15 feet. But what's happening right now is we have a southeasterly direction that's pushing an onshore flow for the west coast, so places like Miami getting inundated with water. And then on the west coast, we are seeing a lot of that receding the water. So places like Clearwater Beach, a lot of that is just receding, and we're seeing a lot of that beach just being exposed, pushed further back. But like I mentioned, we will see wave heights as it pushes closer in excess of to 15 feet. So I'll show you this right now. Along the Key West area, upwards of 3 meters is a storm surge threat, and we will be continuing to monitor that. Now, a Irma connection to Canada. In Atlantic Canada, we have a stationary boundary, and that is helping push up a lot of the moisture, some of the moisture from Irma. And we've got rainfall warnings still in effect for St. John's, the Avalon Peninsula. We've already picked up about 55 millimeters with an additional 40 to about 60 millimeters on tap, and we'll play out the precipitation forecast here. Getting through Monday afternoon, the rain will continue, and for coastal sections of Nova Scotia too as well, Cape Breton, Sydney could see gusts upwards of about 90 kilometers per hour. North Coast BC, rain continuing there, rainfall warnings in effect, and we'll have the latest on Irma coming up. The big story, of course, is Hurricane Irma. We continue to track it here at the Weather Network. Here's a couple of our weather events across the country, starting with Hurricane Irma. It made landfall around 9:10 Eastern time in the Keys, and basically it was a Category 4 storm. We continue to see dangerous storm surge as a result of this. Rain continuing for Atlantic Canada. We still have rainfall warnings in effect for places like St. John's. We've already picked up about 55 millimeters with an additional 60 millimeters expected in the area. Meanwhile, temperatures rebounding for the Great Lakes. That's all courtesy of a southerly flow. It's been quite cool. We had frost advisories in effect yesterday, and then the summer heat holds across the southern prairies. Now, a lot of that pushing into Manitoba now, but it's followed by a sharp cool down, and that's because we do have a cold front that's pushing through, and Hurricane Irma. We have our very own Mark Robinson and Chris St. Clair in the field in Florida, and we will be getting updates through the hour courtesy of both of them. The storm made landfall for the first time as a Category 4. That was around 9:10 a.m. local time. That was in Cujo Keys, so the lower Keys. And then a second landfall came around 3:35 p.m. local time, and that was in the Marco Island area. We are closely watching the Naples area as well as we continue to see the eye wall track closer inland. Now, the track of Irma, as we play this out, it's going to move closer to northern Florida by Monday afternoon, impacting southwestern Georgia as well. And I want to send things over to Rosa. She's a reporter from CNN with the latest for our Hurricane Irma coverage. Well, basically, the storm is located about 55 kilometers south of Naples. We'll watch the eye as it moves closer. The strongest winds are currently occurring in Marco Island and Naples, and they will over the next several hours as this eye kind of approaches the southwest quadrant of Florida. We have our very own Chris St. Clair and Mark Robinson in the field. They're in Sarasota. They will be providing updates, but we have widespread hurricane warnings and watches. The center will move over southwestern Florida, the coast of the peninsula, move northward in towards southwestern Georgia come Monday afternoon, so we will be closely monitoring this. When we talk about storm surge, we have warnings in effect for the west. We could see like up to 4.5 meter storm surge associated with this storm. How it works is we have a strong southeasterly flow and onshore flow for the east coast and offshore on the west. A lot of that water receding actually, so we had shots of Clearwater Beach that a lot of the beach was starting to recede. We'll show more of that, but here is science behind storm surge. Rain, rain, go away. That's probably what you're saying if you're located in St. John's. Thanks for joining me. I'm Leeanna Mclean for the Weather Network. Rainfall warnings continue for the Avalon, St. John's included. We've already picked up about 55 millimeters with an additional 40 to 60 millimeters expected as we get through the midweek. Why are we seeing so much rain? Basically, we have a boundary that has set up, and along that boundary, a low pressure system has formed. And for Monday, it's going to stir a lot of the moisture associated, some of which with Hurricane Irma, and it's going to stir north, and that's where we are getting that steady moisture, steady rainfall in towards St. John's. Strong winds also a major factor with this. Coastal sections of Nova Scotia where we see those darker red colors, in Sydney, for instance, could see gusts peak around that 90-kilometer-per-hour mark, as well as southern sections of Newfoundland to expect that. But as that low pressure system kind of pushes off to sea, we could see a lot of those winds dying down come Tuesday. Let's play out our long range outlook though. Come Monday evening in towards Tuesday, a lot of that precipitation spreading north into remaining portions of the island, and then by around Tuesday evening, a lot of that rain will be dying down. Temperature wise, it's a little bit on the cooler side. 22 in Moncton, 17 in Charlottetown, 16 degrees in St. John as we get through Tuesday afternoon. We also want to talk about Hurricane Irma because we will see some moisture come into Atlantic Canada associated with this. But we have our very own Chris St. Clair and Mark Robinson in the field in Florida, and they will be providing all the latest updates on this major storm. Stick around. We'll have all the latest. We continue to track Hurricane Irma here at the Weather Network. It's made landfall in two places in Florida, the first in Cujo Key and now watching Marco Island. And we will send things, and not only people impacted, but animals away to safer ground. Now, hurricane warnings extend across the entire state of Florida, pretty much impacting over 36 million people. And for more on this, I'm going to send things over to Katrina Bush. Well, strong winds have knocked the power out to over 750,000 customers alone in the Miami-Dade area. We'll have category 2 to 3 to 4 force winds for the southwestern quadrant of Florida over the next several hours. And then we're going to watch the system as it moves across northern Florida into southwest Georgia come Monday afternoon, bringing strong winds, heavy rainfall associated with this, flooding rains with Irma. We could see over 200 to 300 plus millimeters for the west coast of Florida, including Naples. And as that pushes up north, we could see places like Jacksonville being hit with flooding rains as well. So we will continue to track this. Now, the Canadian impact, basically we're watching this major storm churn in the Atlantic, and it's bringing some of that moisture from Irma is being associated with a stationary boundary that is located across Atlantic Canada. And basically we have rainfall warnings in St. John's, the Avalon Peninsula. They continue. Hurricane Irma coverage also continues here at the Weather Network. Well, Kelly, the last I checked, I heard that the eye wall is now slamming Marco Island. Is that correct?
That's right, Leanna.
Thanks for that, Kelly. We will continue to watch it as it makes its way up north through Florida and then approaching southwestern Georgia, a possibility. Now, the Canadian impact, we're going to watch this stationary boundary play out. Essentially, all this moisture getting filtered into St. John's, the Avalon Peninsula, where we currently have rainfall warnings in effect. We've already picked up about 55 millimeters in St. John's, with additional 40 to 60 millimeters on the way as we get through Monday afternoon. Meanwhile, all of these yellow-orangey hues, that is wind warnings currently in place for Bergio. We could see gusts in excess of 100 kilometers per hour through Sunday. Getting into Monday, they will start to dissipate, though, as we watch this system that is offshore. So we'll show that moisture play out, and so you can see all that heavy rainfall with that low-pressure system that's been produced here all the way to St. John's, and then those strong wind gusts also for coastal sections of Nova Scotia, including Sydney. We can see gusts in excess of 90 kilometers per hour play out. A lot of that will dissipate as we get through Tuesday afternoon. Quick peek on the thunderstorm risk for Manitoba and northeastern Ontario. Hurricane Irma coverage continues. Of course, all eyes are on Hurricane Irma, but we do have weather to talk about across the country. Thanks for joining me. I'm Leeanna Mclean. Taking a look at our forecast conditions this evening, 12 degrees in Whitehorse, and we are watching a Pacific low. We have an atmospheric river setting up. A lot of that moisture being filtered into the north and central coast of BC with that low. We could see upwards of 75 plus millimeters of rain expected through Monday, as well as some strong winds associated with this, with gusts upwards of 90 kilometers per hour. Meanwhile, we've got a significant cool down coming as high pressure kind of drops down. We will see a lot of that low temperatures coming in the low teens expected as we get over the course of the next 3 or 4 days. And a lot of that will be dropping across the prairies as well. And when we talk about cold, we talk about snow. Yes, if you can believe it, the first snowfall for the Rockies. So higher elevation, of course, so around 1,062 meters. Jasper, we could see some flakes here and the first snowfall. So I guess a lot of our snowboarders and skiers getting excited for this. Meanwhile, we've got a wet midweek. We'll see a low stateside that kind of drags across the south. That's going to bring some moderate rainfall for places like southern Alberta as well as southern Saskatchewan as we get through the weekend towards Friday. This is some good news for our fire danger forecast. We've had fires ongoing across the southern prairies. I know the Water Lakes National Park was under a mandatory evacuation order from a BC wildfire, so a lot of that rain will be helping out these fires. And of course, we have our very own Mark Robinson and Kristen Clare in the field. Irma is a Category 3 located about 55 kilometers south of Naples. The eye is actually crashing into Marco Island as we speak. Now, as it was a Category 5, we've never seen a Category 5 storm for as long as Irma, and that was 3 days as it made its way across Cuba. And now all eyes on Florida. And for the latest update on this Category 3 major storm, I'll send things over to Kelly Sonnenberg. Well, thanks for that, Kelly. We will check back in with meteorologist Kelly Sonnenberg through the hour. We have rainfall warnings in effect for the north coast of BC as we continue to see a strong Pacific low bring heavy rainfall. We could expect anywhere between 40 to 60 millimeters come Monday morning for places like Kitimat. We'll play out our precipitation forecast. Bella Coola, upwards of 100 millimeters expected as we get through Monday. Portions of Vancouver Island could see up to 15 millimeters as well. Now, we do have wind warnings in effect for Burgeo with wind gusts upwards of 100 kilometers per hour expected. Rainfall warnings continue in St. John's. We've already picked up about 55 millimeters so far. The latest on Hurricane Irma coming up. Well, the wildfires, of course, continue across the northern prairies. Northern Saskatchewan, we do have air quality statements that remain in effect, pushing into Manitoba as well. And we also have the thunderstorm risk to talk about. And that's all associated with a low pressure system that's located in the Northwest Territories. And as that front drags across, we've got the risk of thunderstorms for portions of northern Manitoba, getting into northeastern Ontario as well for our Sunday. So we could see some heavy rainfall and strong winds associated with this. So as we play out the precipitation forecast, a lot of that rainfall confined to the north, pushing into Manitoba as we get through Monday morning, and then high pressure along the south. So the south coast remaining dry for the most part, but we are watching a Pacific low in British Columbia. A lot of that rainfall will be making its way in towards Alberta through midweek. Our wind gust forecast, so associated with this low, quite gusty to the northern prairies. We're talking gusts upwards of 85 kilometers per hour for portions of northern Manitoba, getting into northeastern Ontario as well. And then when we see strong wind gusts like this, we're also talking about cooler temperatures behind this front as it drags towards the east. A lot of that cooler, fresher air making its way down. Now, I know we had heat warnings in effect for southern Saskatchewan. Those have dropped as we get that cooler air just filtering in. Let's take a quick peek at our 7-day forecast. Like I mentioned, that rainfall expected for Calgary midweek, Wednesday and Thursday. Look at that. We go from 26 degrees on Monday, dropping down to 8 degrees on Wednesday, if you can believe it, and definitely cooler air filtering in. Certainly all eyes are on Hurricane Irma, but forecast temperatures across the country, I can sum it all up in one word: cool. Well, across BC, we have cooler conditions for Vancouver, dropping down to about 17 this evening. And then across the southern prairies, we had heat warnings in effect for southern Saskatchewan. Those now dropped. 18 degrees in Regina for this evening, and cool across eastern Canada as well. What is keeping conditions cool? We have high pressure locked in place and a cool northerly flow. 9 degrees is our Monday morning temperature, and St. John's 12 degrees, so just barely cracking those double digits. So high pressure, like I mentioned, with a cool northerly flow. But that's for eastern Ontario, southern Quebec. Come Monday, we'll have a southerly flow that will bump temperatures up just a little bit. Seasonal this time of year sits at around that 22 to 23 degree mark. It's also cool on the prairies behind this cold front as it drags eastward. We've got cooler air coming down south. And we have high pressure that's situated basically in BC. As you can see, it's just moving across, and as it sinks south, it's bringing all that cool air with it. A low pressure system will bring some moderate rainfall too across the southern prairies as we get through the midweek, and that will help conditions stay around that cool area too as well. So live on location, we have Mark Robinson as well as Chris St. Clair. They were in Sarasota earlier. They will be in Florida for the next several days talking about Hurricane Irma.